We are live. There we are, everybody. I think everything's good. Yep, it looks good on my end. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Okay. Lovely, lovely stuff. There we are. Okay, how we all doing? Let me make sure. Yep, that works. That works. Okay. Fortunately, I do not have water on hand, chat. I did not grab my water, so hopefully I don't get I don't need hydration at any point. Oh boy. Yeah, we closed this. I don't need this open. Okay. All right, so I think this works. Yeah, this works perfect. All right, I think we're in a good place to start. So I have started a little bit. I've started a little bit on trying to like get into like the nitty gritty of some stuff, but it's a mess. It's gonna be. I have to go through these things. Thankfully, we have the divided by like the rough area, but like going through and like being like, okay, Sullivan and Oceros and Tridhimade and all these. When do each characters intersect with each other? Roughly speaking, it's gonna be rough. If not, I mean, at some point I may just have to give up and be like, okay, like these aren't going to be like obviously absolutely accurate to having in front of each other, but it's really hard to kind of gauge when exactly, you know, X or Y is happening for specific events, at least for this like earlier period. But it is what it is. Like I said, I think last time I wanted to skip this, I think, and we'll just go straight to the post Dragkeep stuff because that'll be the easier stuff, and then we can work through what is happening concurrent with the Ashen One and all that stuff. Yeah, so we should just put like, you know, Dragkeep forms and stuff like that, right? Is this a rave party or a Dark Souls timeline? I mean, we need a rave to help me get through this Dark Souls timeline, so I'll take it. Howdy, Xavier. Good to see you there. Hello, I am. What kind of orphanage? The fun kind of orphanage, you know. Laurence loves kids. He loves those kids up in the upper cathedral ward. Just don't ask him what he does with them up there. Laurence loves kids. There we go. Important event in the timeline. No, okay. Serious thing would be the Dragkeep forms. Harvest Valley / Earthen Peak arrives. Let's see, arrives. Lothric arrives. Firelink Shrine arrives. Oh. I won't mention the Ulyssilian thing because I think that's getting a little too broad. I think just mentioning like these important points. Loki, you have to promise right now you'll upload the DS timeline and DS3 timeline on Discord. Promise that. I mean, I gave you guys my recent draft of the DS1 timeline on the Loki's latest, so it is there. We'll see about I'll probably do the draft for 3 once we finish with this one today. But like I said, the organization might take a few more drafts. Hey, no, Bray. Would you Kirk Newtonly say that Laurence would own an island? I don't know what a Kirk Newtonly is supposed to be, no, Bray, but when I say that Laurence owns an island, I mean, he goes to an island. It's called Canehurst. Don't ask what happens on Canehurst Island, chat. And don't ask why there are skulls in the fountain. Yeah, DS1 timeline's already up for you guys. All right. So, what do we say would happen after with the Drake Keep and stuff? Oh, okay. Lothric, slaves, or Zoe encounters Lothric, slaves, and forms cult. Let's and establish. Yeah, let's just say informs cult. Let's just say that, right? Harvest Valley town parishes. Well, desert pyromancers perish, except Zoe. All right. So that has to, of course, happen. Pilgrims of Londor continue traveling. No, let's see. Continue marching to Lothric, or continue march to Lothric. My feeling when the horrors persist. The horrors of the timeline. It continues endlessly. I think I can delete this, but for now we'll include that just for the sake of it. 1 second, chat. I wanna just adjust my my setup here so it's a little more comfy for me. All right. There we go. Zoe stuff I think is pretty much done. The angels. Oh wait. You know what we can include here? Pilgrims of Londor become angels. Perishing in Dragkeep become angels. I don't think we need to mention the Stone Hump Hag. Oh, but I mentioned her elsewhere. You know what? Stone Hump Hag gives up and enjoys the view. Uh, let's call it Ashfield Abyss. The Ashfield Abyss. Corrupted one. Corrupted Wanderers Severe become Merkman. Let's see. Pus of Man. Yeah, there's no point in mentioning this. It's not like a major event here that the Pus of Man and Lothric Soldier Knights and all that are like stagnating as well. So like, okay, we have that happening there at the Dreg Heap. Herald Knights. Actually, I forget. Do they count as technically knights? One second, chat. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact terminology. It might be Senshi instead that's used for them. Maybe Herald Warriors. Let me... There you guys go. All right. Herald? Oh yeah, Herald. I forgot. It's not Herald, it's Herald. Yeah, they're like a group of warriors, not a group of knights. So this is not like a knight order or anything. All right. Okay, it is Senshi. Gotcha. Okay. In that case, Herald Legion become travel to the Ring City. Let's see. Travel to the Ring City. Granted, this could have happened. This could feasibly have happened, I think, before the Dreg Heap formed exactly. But let's get Herald Legion. Travel to the Ring City. How do I put this? Herald warriors succumb, are killed, and become consumed by the abyss. Herald Legion begin appearing, emerging from abyss in the Dreg Keep. All right, so that'll cover that. Loki up and running at Euro hours? Quinn Blaz, hey Kimley. Yeah, I know. I like doing midday streams a lot, chat. The problem is just like, you know, with the way things are, it's not always possible. Thankfully, things went really well for me this morning. We had a really swimming time, I will say. So I feel like I can take the time to do this right now with you guys. So I'm happy about that. Ashfield Abyss. I think Silent Hill 4 would like a word with you. No. It's fine. It's legally distinct. I swear. I think that makes sense. Or just the abyss in general, do we want to put it as? Right? Let's see. The Ring City. Let's double check. Actually, I do not remember all the details about the Abyss Swamp off the top of my head. Where's Ring City? Oh no, chat, I'm blind. I'm blind, chat. Ring City, right there you are. Swamp. Just to mention. Da-da-da. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. I don't see anything. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that really requires it to only come online later. Yeah, okay. One can only argue the extent, how fast the extent and stuff is. Okay, yeah. Yeah, this makes sense to me. Might want to do some stuff then for the Ring City. Oh, there we go. Probably want to add some stuff to the DS1 timeline for Ring City related then. Still. Yeah. There we go. Let's see. Ring City. The Abyss. Collective. Humanity. Form. Abyss. Swamp. Ring City, Abyss, Swamp. Links up. Let's see, links up with Drake. Well, actually, let's see this. Ring City and Drake Keep, Abyss, Swamps, link up. Dragon Slayer, armor, emerges from swamp. Corrupted Herald. I think we should put the Herald Legion stuff. Let me put this stuff here, chat. I think it's one of these that we have to go back to and decide what we're going to do with in terms of timeline stuff, where we'd want to put it. Herald Legion emerges from swamps. From the city swamp. Emerges from the city and heap swamps. There we go, from both. So Drake Heap, Lothric Arise, Firelink Shrine. Kiln of the First Flame arrives. The First Flame arrives, Irithel arrives. Irithel / Anor Londo arrive. Faron arrives. We see these in the cinematic. Yeah, I'm including our Firelink Shrine under Lothric. Let's clarify. Lothric Castle. Lothric Castle and City arrives. Yeah, there we go. Keep arrives. We'll just say Faron in general. I live in an abyssal swamp. Filianor is my mom and Tracer Armor is my dad. Oh, that's a dark metaphor. I am. Who among the Lords of Cinder do you think would be best at Scrabble? Aldrich, because he has the best poker face. No way in hell they're gonna allow Yorm to keep the hood on. They're gonna want to look at that fucker's expression. And it's a big ass face he's got there. Kind of hard to hide. Abyss Watchers, I feel like Abyss Watchers would kind of be cheating though. They could all just talk among themselves about all the different words and stuff they could pick. Unless they have like, they select one guy, they stick their one guy. I mean, maybe the statistics will go in their favor because at least one of them has to be really good at Scrabble, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, right. While we're there. Let's see. Witches. Zuli and witches. And other witches. Merge from the city swamp. Yeah. Witches become witches are forced. No, witches are forced. Let's just say witches become contracted to the giant adjudicators. Spirits, souls of Aegon. You know, we'll put that afterward, actually. Yeah, we'll just put it here. Souls of Aegon and Alva become Black Phantoms. We'll just use the Demon Souls term since that's the closest parallel. Become Black Phantoms. I think that covers what we'd want. Thesaurus John of the Abyss Watchers. Yeah, exactly. That has to be one of them. Is there anything else involving it? No, there's just like the priests are kind of out there. You got the adjudicators kind of out there. You got the knights kind of out there. Oh, I forget now. I'm pretty sure the locusts were recent. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Boom. Let's see. Locust men emerge from the ring city abyss. Oh, actually, let's put it like this. Let's put it all under this. Locust men emerge from the city swamp. Locust men. I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to get into the specifics of the Lucent Appetite and stuff. There's nothing really contingent on understanding that process. So that covers all that. Yeah. I think that's it for Dragkeep. The Ashen one arrives to the Drake, or travels to the Dragkeep, we should say. Lap meets the stone, encounters the stone humphead, and journey and travels to the Ring City. We'll start there. Let's say and begins traveling to the Ring City. Gale travels to the Dragkeep and begins and travel to the Dragkeep and travels to the Ring City from the Dragkeep. Wow, the Ashen one travels to the Dragkeep. The Demon Prince is reborn and killed. The Ashen one is carried to the Ringed City. It's funny how Zoe's the only desert sorcerer left in the world. Well, like, to be fair, when you have your entire village and it's suddenly basically plopped out of time and thrown into a giant hellscape of like everything crashing together and all that stuff, and God, and you know, you have giant like piece of the abyss lurking underneath the ash where you know, stuff like the Herald Legion are emerging. Yeah, I'm not surprised when all of them are basically getting killed off, you know? I mean, the fact that she survived and meets up with the Lothric slaves who also managed to survive, right? And they basically kind of team up to form their own little like queendom, you know, in what's left of the world. Like, you know, like I like that. Like, I think that's like a neat little like idea, you know, it's like, you know, it's like this post-apocalyptic or rather like mid-apocalyptic type of setting. And yet you have these people who are still just trying to survive and navigate through this world, and they end up two people who otherwise two groups that, or parties I should say, that otherwise never would have crossed paths, end up meeting and finding common ground to try to survive, right? And then we come in and ruin it. And then we come in and we just have to come in and ruin everything. Hey, listen, she assumed we were a threat first. Maybe understandable, but come on. Patties never die. Listen, it's because she's hot. The universe clearly gave her all that good luck of humanity. Let's see. Ashy one's carried off to the Ring City. You can theoretically kill Lap when you first meet him, right? And then he won't do the kicking and everything, right? Like that theoretically can happen, right? So yeah, I don't think we need to mention Lap any further. And learns about the Purging Monument. There you go. The Ashen Half-Light is summoned and defeated by the Ashen one. Filianor is awakened. And the Ring City stasis ended. The Ring City reverts from stasis Gale attacks the pygmy the council of pygmy kings are killed, and Gale consumes their souls. Deers. Oh wait, we should also can't forget. Midir returns. Midir returns from returns to the Ring City. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I think that's about it, right? You almost forgot Quid's favorite pet. I don't know. That's what that if Midir is his favorite pet, but Seath seems to have seems to have appreciated him enough. Man, it would have been cool if Midir did end up with like the crystal whip thing. Man, that would have been a cool little thing to have. Like, you know, Seath get like giving him like a giant ass crystal like whip thing he's got with it. I don't even know how a crystal whip would work. You know, is it just a normal whip, but it's been crystallized by? Even that's like, how do you keep it from being so rigid? Like, I have questions. The Ashen One returns. Because technically we can go to the Dread Keep and then immediately afterward head to the kiln of the First Flame. Like, there's not. Because technically we can go to the kiln of the First Flame and do the Dread Keep stuff from there. So, yeah. We'll just leave it as travels to the Dread Keep, because and have this refer to either Firelink Shrine and or the Firelink Shrine and or the starting area when we go from Ariandel and stuff, because either or works. The Council of Pygmy Kings are killed and Gale consumes their souls, and we know that Gale is killed. And the Fair and the Ashen. Gale, Hollow Gale is killed. The Ashen One gifts the painter, the pigment is killed, and his blood and the Ashen One collects his blood as pigment. Painter the pigment, and she begins painting a new world. The Ashen One. Technically, this takes place earlier in the timeline, so. The Ashen One returns for the Drake Keep. The Ashen One travels to the kiln, travels to the kiln of the First Flame. The Ashen One travels to the kiln of the First Flame. The soul of Cinder is killed. And then we don't know. We don't know what ending is canon. Technically, the pigment can be given at any point. There's no specific period. In fact, you know what? Let's include it here. There you go. Right, because this can we can do these actions pretty much as soon as we beat Ariandel, right? Like we can go to Ariandel and do the Dreadkeep stuff right away, if I remember correctly. What about Shira? I don't think she's important enough to mention. Because she just you don't have to interact with her and you don't have to encounter her at the Dreadkeep. And I don't think she does anything notable enough worth mentioning for the timeline purposes. So I think we could safely skip her. Similar to why I'm not mentioning anything with like patches and stuff like that, because there's so many different interactions you can have with patches or whatever, and none of them are really consequential to anything. In the grand scheme, of course, of this timeline. The Ashwan returns to before the Dreadkeep. Ashwan gives, like I said, this stuff, maybe we could put it somewhere up here in like the main thing, but at earliest, all you have to do is the Ashwan just has to get to the Cathedral of the Deep, beat Aryan, beat the Frida boss fight, then you can instantly go to the Dreadkeep from the bonfire that Gale leaves. Then immediately afterwards, you can go all the way through the entire DLC and defeat Gale, and then you can return back. So that kind of leaves a huge room for maneuvering. So yeah, we should probably mention the Ariandel stuff. We should probably include all the Ariandel stuff like part of the Cathedral of the Deep package in the timeline, but like there's a lot of flexibility there. It's kind of like how I handle Sif, and I you can technically kill Sif earlier on, but I make sure to put it like, you know, in a logical order before the Four Kings fight and stuff. Because obviously one is a prerequisite for the other. I think it might do something like that, where we'll just put it all around the Cathedral of the Deep era stuff and include it. And then the question is just going to be, you know, how detailed we want to get on some of this. All right. All right. So that I think covers all the Dreadkeep and Ring City stuff of relevant, right? You know what? Actually, instead of saying Ash Field, let's say Ash Desert to keep it consistent with later on. There we go. Demons in pain and from below begin feasting in hollow. Oh, I see. 2 chaos demons, or 2 bat demons. Let's just say chaos. 2 chaos demons begin scavenging Great Hollow in Dreadkeep. 2 wounded. Both demons fall ill. To the rot they scavenge. Oh, let's just say fought ill. All right. Actually, let's see. 2 demons wander the Dreadkeep. Let's just put it like that. Both demons scavenge the Great Hollow and fall ill. 2 demons begin scavenging the Great Hollow and fall ill. 2 demons, 2 demon inheritors of Demon Prince's soul begin wandering Wander the Dread Keep. Yeah, that makes sense. Both demons become wounded or injured. There we go. Unfortunate news, I did an angry Donald Duck voice of my dog, and now he looks really guilty. Like, he thinks he did something wrong. I even gave him a treat, and he still looks confused. Pray for him. Nah, you gotta be careful with that stuff. The dogs, they don't know. They're like, oh, is something wrong with you? Like, why are you making those noises? I've never heard that before. I do the same thing with mine. She's always like, she actually turns her head being like, what the hell am I listening to? Like, what? Dare? Yeah. Oh. Make him injured and wandering. While wandering. While surviving. Suffer injuries. And suffer illness. Okay, there we go. Okay, this brings us back to the Chaos Demons, actually. Old Demon King and Demon Deacons begin burying the undead, the dead. Let's see. 2 Chaos Demons take Smolder. Inherit Smolder. Take, let's see. Take Smolder of Demon Princes. Soul. Marrying the dead. Fire demons. Scatter. Two bat demons take Smolder of yeah, something like that. You can move the stuff around, but until for now that's fine. We have the demons with the fire demons and stuff. Speaking of I don't remember if it's specifically the church, so I'll just put borders. Set up Pontiff Knights. Set up a base in the undead settlement. Teen zone from base and contact Emma and make contact with Emma. Launch assault on Arthur Kissel. Cornix is captured in the undead cell. Okay, there we go. That's a good one. Fire demon attacks the undead settlement. Yeah, that's good. Okay. All right, so let's see. The Ashen one awakens. Is awakened. Rises from his or her coffin. I think we can simplify it. The Ashen one is awakened. Let's just say that for now. Gunder is killed. And the Ashen one collects the what's it? Firelink sword, or the spiral sword. The spiral sword. Yeah, Gunder is killed and the Ash one collects a spiral sword. With the spiral Firelink, let's see, the bonfire of Firelink, let's see, actually the Ashen one restores the bonfire of Firelink Shrine and travels to Firelink Shrine. The Ashen one travels to the high wall of Lothric. Vort is killed, and the Ashen one. There we go. The Ashen one is carried off to the undead settlement. Godhard leaves Lothric Castle. And begins traveling to Irithyll. Curse Rotted Greatwood may or may not be dead. Optional boss fight and all that. I don't think it needs to be, but the Curse Rotted Greatwood. Right? Yeah. The Curse Rotted Greatwood begins lashing out. That's about right. Out from curses. From the curses. I don't think we need to. Let's just lashing out. So next off, we either do the cathedral stuff or we do. I think cathedral stuff would probably make. We should again. It's like the other thing where you could technically do Faron Keep, Karthus, hit the dead end at Irithyll, then go to the cathedral and all that stuff. But I think we'll do the cathedral first. So Gale travels to the Cathedral of the Deep and prays in Cleansing Chapel. Wandering Gale. I think it's better. Prays at the Cleansing Chapel. The Ashen one travels to the Cathedral of the Deep. The Ashen one let's see, is drawn into the travel. Let's say travels to Ariandel. The Ashen one travels to Ariandel. The Corvians of the Ariandel settlement begin protesting. The Ashen Wilhelm is killed, and the painter is freed from the settlement library. Father Ariandel and Elfrida are killed. And the flame is unleashed. Begins consuming Ariandel. And then the question is with Gale. Yeah. Let's see. Next off is the Deacons of the Deep are killed. Oh, so the Ashen One. Archbishop Royce. Well, Royce is killed. And the Ashen One collects the small. The silver doll. I forget what the exact thing it's called. Is there anything else we could add here in terms of stuff that's happening? Yeah, let's see. Horace and Henri become Blue Sentinels. I don't think there's anything that really happens with Hawkwood. It's a little... Yeah, little vague there. Yeah, okay, so let's see. Aegon and Arena. Aegon captures Arena in undead. Let's just say is captured in the settlement. Attacks the settlement. Actually, no, you have to be still the undead settlement. Is captured in the settlement prison. Yeah. So you have that small doll, that's what it's called. Good to know. There we go. Let's also have that there. I think it's fair. Yeah, okay. Silver Doll. The Abyss Watchers are killed. The Abyss Watchers and Wolnir are killed. The old Demon King is killed. Yeah, and then it's just we basically can go in for Sullivan. The Ashen One travels to Irithel and kills Sullivan. Aldrich is killed. Honestly, we could just say Sullivan and Aldrich. I think it's fine. Is there anything important that happens in between these events? Like what would we mention? Like Sigurd and like I don't think we should mention individual NPC stories. I don't think they're important enough for this. If we know what events are done for the setup for a lot of these. Like Sigurd, I don't think is really worth mentioning here. There's so many options on how these things can play out. Yeah, there's just too much. There's too much that's like contingent on certain things that the player does or what have you. I just don't think it's relevant there. are killed. The Old Demon King is killed. Sullivan and Aldrich is killed. Actually, since Old Demon King is completely optional, we can leave that out because he could die theoretically of anything in the period afterward before we encountered the Dread Keep and stuff. So Sullivan and Aldrich are killed. Yorm is killed. Lords of Cinder are returned to their thrones. There we go. The Ashen One returns to Lothric Castle. The Dancer is killed. The Dragon Slayer armor is killed. The Lorien and Lothric are killed. All right. Right. Okay. Returns to the castle and is killed. Hunter. Gertrude is assassinated. And the hunter is. And the third Black Hand is killed. There we go, yeah. Let's see. The eclipse appears. There we go. So obviously we have the eclipse. Most likely bored of being stuck in Karthus. I too, even as a skeleton, would die of boredom if I was stuck in Karthus, where all I could do is work on timelines. All right, so Lorien and Lothric are here. I already have that down here. Yeah, we can just say this. And is killed. Gertrude and the third Black Hand is killed. Anything we want to do? Let's see. Albert, Kamui, and Kriemhild. Oh, Albert, Kriemhild, and Kamui. Stand to defend the twin princes. All right, so I think that covers all the major things of note for everything we talked about up until now, right? Go to the cathedral, do the thing, go through, kill, do the thing. There we go. Citizens of the Corvian settlement begin protesting. There we go. Freed from the settlement library. Are killed in the flame. Yeah, because this can happen here earlier, let's include this stuff here. The returns to Ariandel. Let's see, the Ashen one. The painter awaits the pigment from Gale. Let's see, actually the painter prepares to paint her new world. A new world. The Ashen one leaves and returns. Yeah, there we go. Could you imagine describe the idea of Hatsune Miku to a pilgrim? I'm very tired right now. I don't think anyone in this setting is quite ready to grasp the concept of virtual idols. They'll be like, wait, so you use illusions to make them sing and dance for you? And it's like, yes. And make sure they have bright green hair. Granted, that might be easy for them. If they have purple-haired tribes, I think they can accept. I think they can accept a green-haired Miku. I think that's totally possible. Let's just put it like this. The Ashen one returns and gifts. The Ashen one is dragged to Ariandel outskirts. Began protesting the Corvian Knights. Actually, you know what? The Corvian Knights begin suppressing citizen rebellion in the settlement. Protests in the settlement. All right. Hmm. and began hunting the... Yeah, I think that's fair. There we go. So also on Twitter say that DS3 starts contradicting the franchise lore and saying it's incomprehensible. LOL. As I've said before, nobody understands Dark Souls 3 because they never understood Dark Souls 2 or 1. And you can't understand the third game without understanding both of those. You can't understand the second game if you don't understand the first one. It's a clusterfuck. Fans have for the longest time not gone around not understanding the games at all. That they look at things and they're like, oh, that contradicts the lore. It's like, no, it's building upon and adding upon what has always been there. Dark Souls 3 hate will never really stop. Hate for anything will never really stop. Again, there's always going to be some fraction of people who will either justified or unjustified will hate on something, right? It's just the nature of things. My point is like in reference to the specific thing that I am talking about. Like again, this is one of the things that's just silly. It's people who fundamentally just misunderstand what the events of the first and second game are, unfortunately, and as a result, they have a perverted idea of like what the actual happenings and revelations in Dark Souls 3 are. Again, it is what it is. Ashen ones are awakened typo. Thank you. Let's see. There we go. There we go. All right. Is that everything, chat? Did I list it all out? Have I got in the good bits? Two dies and becomes tree. Just mentioned that. Like I said the other stream, we haven't collectively accepted Solaire's dialogue isn't multiplayer hand waving, so no shot everyone will process DS3 probably. Yeah, I get it's just the nature of the beast, you know. These games rely on Miyazaki is going to tell his story whether we understand it or not. He would like for us to understand it, but he's completely content if we just kind of go off in our own little worlds, you know, constantly thinking that we have the right idea or whatever. Right? And he's still going to be telling his story or whatever, right? And if that means that you aren't going to be able to reconcile your idea of what the story is versus the story that he's been telling clearly across these games, it's gonna cause problems, right? It's gonna cause some cognitive dissonance. It just is the nature of the thing, and everyone will always grab to retcons, right? It's always the complaint will always be retcons and fan service. Well, fan service isn't really a problem in and of itself. Fan service that is pointless, right? Or fan service for fan service's sake, sure, that is something you can criticize. But fan service in itself is ultimately just a tool, because, well, why wouldn't you want the fans to be service, all else being equal in terms of quality of story and all that stuff? And then for retcons and stuff like that, again, retcons are a more dicey subject, obviously, because people generally like continuity because they want their worlds to matter, so that way there's some reason to actually be invested in it. You know, it's not something that becomes completely arbitrary or nonsense. And that's one of the things with the whole time is convoluted thing. If the world of Dark Souls is seriously, we want to just accept this idea that, oh, you know, time's just convoluted, then Dark Souls is a nonsense world, and there's no point in discussing it. It's whatever anybody says it is at any given time, because whatever, time's convoluted, we can hand wave it for everything, right? This is the underlying tension there with this idea of then you know, trying to claim retcons, because you can't have it both ways, right? You can't claim, like, you know, oh, time is convoluted and all that stuff, and then have the retcons, right? So let's assume, the Steelman, that the people here, like, okay, they agree, you know, the whole thing with the time and whatever, we can argue about the time and the stagnation, all that stuff. It's not really that relevant to understanding a proper narrative or story there. So then the problem really is that over the course of the games that there have been these retroactive continuity, and I've said it before. I would say that I don't think these games have had don't really retcon much of anything, with an asterisk of being like, it depends on how you define it exactly, as the qualifier. Like, for example, would you consider, say, the Nameless King with the sword spear thing as a retcon? It's like, like, I you know, like, personally, like, me on a very personal level, I'd be like, you know, I really don't think that was probably the original idea. But, you know, there's a fair argument to be had that the spear in his statue doesn't quite look like the spear that Ornstein has. It looks definitely a bit more sword blade like. So maybe you can make a case that maybe they had some idea of that early on, right? And that's the problem with having it, where the narrative is the writers or writer for the narrative is so mum about details and things, and leaves so much for fans to interpret, that there is a lot of room for them to be able to change things without having ever had a you know, a clear intent or canon in mind, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, like, it is you know, there's a difference between, say, you retroactively changing the continuity of something, and you sort of having holes that you are retroactively exploring or expanding upon that were never touched upon whatsoever, right? But what about my poorly conceived conspiracy theories? How else will I get views on YouTube? Again, we've gone over some, like, reaction stuff like that. I was criticizing Hawkshaw's video, which, by the way, I realized that video is actually 4 months old, chat, and I think it already has a sequel from what I saw on my YouTube feed now. So I'm like, oh, I kind of want to you know, check that out sometime and see what the follow-up is. But yeah, I was like, I didn't like how Hawkshaw seemed to be going in the conspiratorial direction, because obviously I think it's fallacious based on the evidence that he was putting forward and his reasoning for wanting to doubt, I guess, the official narrative and all that stuff. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, it unnecessarily is complicating a story which is already pretty straightforward and simple and is pretty explanatory in and of itself, right? Like, we don't need to be going this far to try to justify the things in the lore. Like, if I were to criticize the whole narrative device in New Londo, I would say two things. It's like, one, the mechanism with which the water and everything was falling could be made a lot clearer and more logical if they want to do so. Like, just put, like, some holes in the ceiling or something if you really want to you know, clarify that type of stuff, or if you want to argue it comes from they always intended for it to come from below or whatever, have maybe something there in New Londo where you could be like, oh yeah, that's where the water would pour in or something, right? Like, just something there would have been nice to have. Again, I understand why, because much like with everything in From Software, it's they make the parts, they do the things, and then once the research is done, they have to work with what they got, and they're not always gonna be able to make it like pitch perfect on every little detail. At some point, they want you to kind of be able to hand wave and look at things without, like, you know, 20/20 vision, just kind of squint and accept what they're trying to sell you. But there is a you know, that's something I would have liked to see more. I think I would have liked maybe what's the word? I think I maybe would have liked a little bit more on the idea of the seal beyond it just being like a gate or something. Like, maybe something a little bit more like magical they could have done with either the water or something to make it, you know, just kind of more, you know, what's the word? More clear cut on exactly how and what elements of this sealing system even was expected to function, beyond the idea of, okay, we just shut the doors, I guess we open the faucets, and then I guess we just kind of stay here and pray. And like I said with the Hawkshaw thing, I think there is a criticism to be had of, okay, I would have liked maybe a little more like just like a tiny word to say, or maybe some IN description or something on exactly why the Dark Race and the Four Kings did not possibly could either were not aware, why they were somehow not aware of this when the sealers of course were, or if they were aware of this, why they had done apparently nothing about it. Was it really just hubris? They were just that certain that no one in their group would ever dissent or do so, even though it's such apparently an easy failsafe that just a handful of sealers could you know, a handful of sorcerers could accomplish all this while they were distracted. Like there's definitely, like I said, if I were to really like push myself and be like critical of the Dark Souls 1 narrative, and specifically the New Londo narrative, that would be sort of what I would be attacking. And I don't think Hawkshaw was quite going in that direction I would have liked. But again, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing what crazy conspiratorial stuff that he's got for us next time. And who knows, maybe he will convince me, chat. Maybe he's onto something. Got that done, yeah. Got that done. Da-da-da. Yeah, some of this stuff is mostly fine. There's nothing in terms of characters. Yeah, it's just Cirrus, Aegon, Irina, Cornix, what's his name? Not Griggs. I always forget it. God, why do I always forget? Why do I Orbeck, that's what it is. Orbeck, Horace and Henri, Yuria, Yol. I don't think Yol's even worth mentioning, honestly. Stonehump Hag, we've talked about. The old lady connected to the Xanthos scholars, that pilgrim, Siegward, Patches. Are there any NPCs I'm forgetting? Emma. Is worth mentioning Emma being dead yet? Yeah, I think that covers it. Like, we have a few summons, but none of them are really notable, like, outside of Gotthard. Good old Gotthard. Oh, yeah. All right. And now for the not so fun parts. All right, so going back, I think 5 to 0 is fair for this period, right? We have the whole Chaos Demons getting hunted to basically extinction, with the thanks to Sullivan and Osseros. Obviously, Prince Lorien has to be involved in this conflict, right? He's the one who kills the Demon Prince and acquires the Smolder. This is before, of course, being bonded to Lothric. Then, obviously, Sullivan, of course, is still fully in power, as is Osseros and all that, so they both have their faculties. You could argue maybe that the conflict took place after Osseros was already starting to go mad. No, actually, that can't be, because Lorien is active. So no, it's definitely before he starts going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for Seath. So that's there. The stuff with Elfrida. This... Yeah, this seems relatively reasonable, I think. You can maybe push it back a few years before that, just because it's not really clarified how long Frida was there. Just that she was there. She was, of course, befriending the painter and stuff. But it can't be, you know, it can't be too far back. Like maybe a decade at most. We want to cover that. So I just don't know if I would want to put that before or after the hunts there. And also we have all the other stuff that goes with it, right? Like we have here. This also becomes a question: when does Frida arrive? Right? Because they have to. Okay, so you have to have the Firekeeper who becomes the corrupted Firekeeper who rings the bell. Right, so she has to be the active Firekeeper still. at the time. So it has to be after the last known Lord of Cinder, which would be you know, Aldrich and the Abyss Watchers and all that stuff. So after all the other Lords of Cinder have been done, she's still around waiting for her champion, right? So so between that time she comes in, and then she's basically there. Obviously, our other Firekeeper is training to do so. We have also Crimheld, but Crimheld seems to have probably been training since before her, based on the timeline and stuff with the Crystal Sages. In that case, yeah, so is there anything else we can do to limit it? I don't know. Yeah, I think putting the 5 to 0 range is probably more or less the safer option. So they try, Elfrida fails. She ends up, you know, leaving in disgrace, becomes part of Ariandel, grows to really like Ariandel. And then in more recent times ends up becoming an absolute tyrant, and Gale ends up leaving on Wandering. He talks about how he's been looking around for so long, but we have no idea how long that actually is in the grand scheme of things. It could be years, could be months. It's very vague. We don't know how much he's basically been blindly searching to find another Ash. Which you think he would realize he should be going looking at the place where all the ashes are buried, but you know, Gale does Gale. So yeah, I think this is the problem, is that the overlap here is it's hard to like really judge. Like at what point was all the stuff that Alfreda's been doing, especially in these like last bits, right, overlapping with the stuff that Osseros is doing and that Sullivan is doing with Osseros? That's the problem. Yeah, the Gertrude stuff's also somewhat variable. Like I could see an argument for the stuff about Gertrude and the Angel taking place after Ocelot is born and Osseros basically kind of walks out. It definitely should be around the same time that Aldi is secretly mentoring Lothric, right? Honestly, I think all of this really makes sense when Osseros is already kind of going crazy, because then it justifies the assassinations more, right? Because it's just like, oh, he's becoming becoming nutso crazy about dragons. Well, this isn't really a problem if nothing's really bad is happening as far as Lothric is concerned. But like, obviously, if you have like this entire scandal with Gertrude and her angel and all that stuff, and the Grand Archives capturing her, which is obviously a move on Aldia's part. It's very clear that Aldia sees that there is, you know, forces like Londor that are trying to maneuver, and he wants to cut them off. Hey, Flack, good to see you in the chat. Yeah, there. Becomes the dragon. Then we have Osseros, and obviously Ocelot has to be Ocelot. He becomes the dragon. Ocelot has to. I guess we can debate how quickly Guinevere is like carrying Ocelot to term. Like, how long does it take for a dragon baby to be born, right? I guess it doesn't have to necessarily be 9 months, but it has to be at least a decent time, right? At least it's not like, you know, just instantly popping out a kid, right? Otherwise he probably would have done a lot more. Yeah, I think this is fine, but the problem is figuring out I think the thing with 3 is that there's just going to be a lot of some variability on how individual what's the word, prongs on this timeline are overlapping. Same stuff with like the fall of Millwood and things like that. Like, you could make definitely a case. I put these things down here because we clearly need them to be at least relatively close to this period. Cornix, we don't know how long he's been doing this. Like if it only started happening when he got old. This is wrong, right? Isn't it Engi? Yeah, something like that. Engi's poison? Pyromancy? Yeah. So this could be like over the course of a longer period. Yeah, we know the fingers and stuff, the dark race joining and everything. Hazel joins. Yeah, we just don't know how far back you put some of this stuff. Like some of this stuff could be outside of like a few years. It could be closer to 10. Right. And if I recall correctly, this period I had marked down as... Oh no, I didn't even have marked down the exact... Okay. All right, so how far back... In that case, let's do this. Actually, no. Yeah, okay. Let's at least be like, okay, somewhere around the more recent decades and stuff like that, these events are probably happening. So like sometime in this period, we're starting to see stuff like the Millwood and everything. Now, like I said, I still feel like some stuff like Millwood might fall under the 5 to 0 range potentially. Maybe this would be awkward, but we could also do this where we try to acknowledge, okay, we have a lot more flexibility on some of this stuff. I don't know. I have to think that one through. Fall of Faron. Yeah, this one's perhaps again, a bit on the vaguer side. So if we want to be fair, yeah, recruits. Make this like a 25-page thing. Skornix is like old man, like Sully is. So he's been around the block for a while. So we can at least say sometime in the last 25 years, like stuff like this is all happening. This is the stuff where more has to be taking place in a narrower period. So roughly, you know, 5 years with stuff, because they're still obviously burying the dead. And if you only have a handful of demons, okay, that's reasonable. You have so many demon dead bodies to bury, sure, okay. Again, I'm being a little generous with the 5 here. It could be something like 3 might be the closer, but, you know, just to keep things simple. Londor, like I said, Londor is a bit of a... Let's put the Londor stuff under this then. Like I said, I don't know if Elfrida would happen before or after the Millwood stuff. I could definitely see an argument for Millwood happening first or second, right? I see it going either way. Because ultimately the question is just like, how long have they been basically, you know, kind of chilling in Ariandel, right? Or did they arrive in Ariandel recently, but they were wandering the earth, you know, before then, while while Frida was doing everything else. Like there are some questions there. Yeah, this also, let's actually include, we should include this under here as well. Because there has to be enough time for, obviously for the Acolytes to become Elder Gru, and then for the Elder Gru to sire new Grus. And even if we take that the new Grus are able to grow like super fast, it still has to take probably at least a number of years for you to have new generations of Grus, right? So no matter how quickly Grus can like hyper evolve and stuff, I think it's probably fair to say, yeah. I think it's fair to put this at a 25-year range for the Abyss Watchers linking the fire and everything that we see with Varon Keep descending after that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Is there anything for I'm trying to think if there's anything. Okay, we know that Astora's collapsed and has people going for cleansing even during the events of yeah, people are going for cleansing even during the before Aldrich shows up during the early days of the cathedral, and then all the stuff with Aldrich happens to happen. So yeah, that's already there. Obviously Abyss Watchers and things because the Crystal Sage and everything is active. So then the question is just sort of the fall of Faron. That's actually something worth exploring, is the idea of the Abysses, because obviously the Abysses aren't really that common. So something to consider exploring for updates to Dark Souls 3 is consider Londor's potential role in Abyss Watchers targets. Yeah, something like that. Just noting that down. Possibility to explore. Yeah, okay, so this, like I said, some of this stuff I've been trying to sort through and kind of figure out how we want to do it. Like, how do we want to split up Sully's and life and his rise to power and all that stuff? Or to put Londor in relation to that. So, because Sullivan is an old man, so he's got to be at least like in his 70s, right? You could maybe argue he's even in his 90s. It's not clarified when exactly he becomes pontiff. We know he was still young, quote unquote, right? And the term used for young gives this idea of probably someone who's between 20 and 30, give or take a few years, like maybe if you want to push it to maybe 35. But he's still a relatively young guy by the time. And given the idea that, you know, he sets out to become, he sets out of Arendelle like as a young man and to explore the wider world and stuff, probably gives the idea that he was like very, you know, still like very young. So I'd probably want to argue closer to 20 than I would to 30, right? Like probably a guy who's like, you know, like I'm ready to go out and see the world, you know? I've been tired of growing up in this like little, you know, this little, what's the word? Backwood. You know, I'm meant for greater things. With that in mind, so let's say he's about 20. Let's say for the sake of simplicity, he's about 20 when he goes over to Irithyll. He ingratiates himself, and then while he's still young, he finds the profane flame, and probably because he was probably almost immediately tasked with working on creating the sewer stuff in order to justify his placement in his home on the outskirts and things, and where the sewers would be built. So that's basically happening right away. And then young Sullivan finds the profane flame, you know, hires Gilligan, is going through exploring and understanding everything that's going on at the profane capital and all that. In the course of that, he then has to start planning a coup. Now, how long does it take for you to essentially buy off or pay or politic or do whatever you can in order to maneuver your way not only into a major position where you can realistically take the position of pontiff, but that you have essentially all of the major players of power essentially going along with you to solidify this takeover. And obviously you also need lots of knights and things who are willing to cooperate, which again might be helped if you're like, oh, look at this profane flame or whatever you could share, and you're doing that. Like, unfortunately we don't have all the specifics to how Sullivan's coup was carried out, right? So there's a little bit of ambiguity there. And it could have taken him maybe a decade or more in order to set this all up. Obviously, there's the suspicious circumstances of Gwendolyn seemingly to fall ill before he does so. Could he possibly have been poisoned or put in a way where they would set him up so that way he would want to isolate himself, and then they could just try to keep him there once they had Yorshka as leverage to negotiate all that. That's 100% a possibility, to keep him in prison there under the pretense of him being ill. So again, like Sullivan could be anywhere. Like I say, he could be anywhere between still in his 30s to being, or even maybe, again, theoretically, maybe even still in his 20s to being like closer to his 40s or 50s when he takes over. And then he's got what, like at least probably a solid 40, 90 years. This is also a thing with overlapping with Osseros, because Osseros, let's assume Osseros takes the crown also relatively young, like in his 20s or something. He probably wants to marry Guinevere pretty quickly after that. Because his whole obsession is about the Firelink or whatever. So he works out a deal with Gwendolyn in order to marry Guinevere so he could sire a Lord of Cinder, right? And he sires Gertrude, he sires Lorien and Lothric to get his necessary heirs all in order. How long does it take between them is a question, right? He might have had his first kid relatively quickly. Maybe there was a gap or something. Either way, it's not clear how many were born or what age they would be by the time Sullivan takes power. But obviously Sullivan has to take power afterward because Guinevere leaves behind the ring or whatever in the cathedral, and Sullivan's not retarded. He's not going to have one god be able to meet for another when he's purposely having that god isolated in order to keep him quiet and out of the way, and not be able to potentially overthrow his overthrow. So so you've got it's Osseros. So Osseros has to be. Yeah, that's the question, because Osseros has to work together with Sullivan on a lot of stuff. So it might be that they're about the same age. I think the problem is we just don't have a solid age range on Osseros. He's never described as old in the same way as like old Demon King, or as Sullivan is shown and of course implied to be by his internal model and internal naming. So young Sorcerer Sullivan and young Osseros could have been, more or less the same age when this stuff is happening, or Osseros could be slightly younger. Because it could be that while Sullivan is marrying Guinevere, while Osseros is marrying Guinevere, Sullivan is already, getting ready to stage his coup. So it's not even that much time until after Osseros and Guinevere's marriage that Sully might be taking over. Yeah, because a lot kind of hinges on that. And if the Shrine Handmaid is, as I suspect, the Osseros's wet nurse, then of course, obviously she's old. If the Ubadachi was being used by Kamui to kill, like she's the old woman who's being killed with the Ubadachi, then she obviously has to already be an old woman, which means obviously she's already had her son. Her son's probably already had Cirrus. What age Cirrus is, that's somewhat vague, but she's clearly already of course had those generations are already like set up, right? And then how old would Osseros be? Like, who knows? Could be anywhere between like, being a little kid, like maybe he's like, 10 or something, 10, 12, or it could be like, older teenager, 18, maybe in his 20s, right? And like I said, anywhere between 20s, maybe even 30s, he's taking over and becoming king under potentially suspicious circumstances. Yeah, and then that would mean that Shrine Handmaids, the Dream Chaser or whatever. Dream Chaser probably, Dream Chaser could die in any number of things, right? Especially if he is a warrior sunlight or what have you. Like just the idea that he's clearly has some combat and soldier experience, could have just died in battle or stuff, since there's implications that Lothric is very often at war, whether it's with more drifting lands or with just other neighbors or something. Could be also related to Londor, potentially. So I just have to, that's something to consider. And then thanks to Celavan's purge of the Darkmoon Knights, we have at least Shira being killed, so we know that, okay, she's at the very least a young woman. She could be in her 20s or 30s as well, but it's hard to tell, especially with the women, because you know a lot of times with From Software games, they like to portray their women as relatively young, and then until they get to like suddenly they become like 80, or like once they hit like, okay, you've been around for like well over half a century, you're like 80 or 90 by now, suddenly they start looking like wrinkly old tiny hunchback women or whatever. That's always the meme. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know on that one. Because like Shrine Handmaid could be become part of Firelink Shrine as an undead for a while at that point. So she would have a chance to potentially fully grow up with only knowing her grandmother from visiting the shrine. Obviously, Haldrick has to leave before that point, and she was not in a position, of course, either because she was too young at the time or what have you. She wasn't in a position to chase after him, but she promised that they would reunite or whatever, right? So that's definitely a thing. So it could be that she had could be that she was too young at the time and then she had grown up already. Haldrick and the Shrine Handmaid were both all wrinkly wrinkly gray-haired characters. So both of them are already were up there in age when they're passing, right? So it wouldn't be that unusual. Wouldn't be that unusual for Cirrus to still be relatively small, though she could have been maybe older than that. Yeah, I guess the problem is just figuring out. I don't think there's ever a point where she's ever referenced by anyone else as like a maiden or anything like that. So we're not really getting a good indication of what her relative age is supposed to be, right? Like we have both the Fair Lady and Dusk referenced as shoujo and stuff like that, right? So there's the idea, okay, relatively youthful girls, maybe in their teens, maybe early 20s or something, like nothing too crazy. Unfortunately, I think those are the only characters we can use in order to try to reverse engineer this. Yeah, there's nothing. There's no other character I can think of, right? Because most other characters are either already undead, right? Like Ziegler's not going to help us. Ziegler seems to die, turn undead, and do so obviously from Yorm's time, and Yorm seems to go back at least a little bit, right? At least a few decades before any of this. Abyss Watchers are undead, so they're not useful. Hazel is potentially useful. She's born there, right? So she's not automatically undead. Is able to grow up a bit. And Crystal Sage is supporting her. Crystal Sages are also a bit of a enigma, because we have no idea how long they've been alive for. Like they could be in their 90s and they were already potentially already in their 70s. So yeah, actually that's something to consider. Yeah, this is pretty generous, I think. So we have no indication that the Crystal Sages are undead, especially when one is still inside the Grand Archives and everything like that, right? Maybe they're undead. At least the one in the Grand Archives is undead now, and maybe by chance the other one we encounter. Actually, no. At the very least, Crystal Sage in both Crystal Sages aren't considered hollows, at least for sure. Now, granted, it doesn't stop them from potentially being undead at this point, but they aren't hollows for sure. So it could be that they died and turned undead. Obviously, one in the course of all the craziness happening at the Sage's Academy, and the other one, of course, with all the chaos happening in Lothric. It's always possible that the Crystal Sage has died and turned undead, but let's assume that they're still alive. They definitely have to be old, because like yeah, because we have no idea when this stuff is happening. But obviously we have We of course have all the stuff with Sullivan, which we could put back maybe 50 years if we really want to push it, right? Again, I feel like I'm being very generous with these years. I think we could push this down to like 40, maybe even 35. And the other lower end put it towards closer to 20. I think 30 maybe being too generous as it is. Sully's definitely been in power for a bit. I don't know if we can say he's been in power though for over 50 years though. That'd be, like I said, maybe because like I said, if we want to make it where he's like he's still a young Sullivan, but the problem is we don't really have a good we don't have a good idea on that one. So the math would have to be something like this, right? Like Sullivan's been ruling for maybe half a century. He's been in power. But that also means that he's like exceptionally old because he was an older man, or he was still relatively young when he was able to take power, and so he's still like only like in his 70s or something. Like he's not that, he's not, grandpa still got it, right? Crystal sages are also like supposed to be old and elders and stuff like that. And the idea is supposed to be they've done their life, they've gone through their entire lives, like, wandering around, studying, researching, all that stuff. So by the time they end up in Lothric, and then one of them ends up splitting off to go to Faron, they should already definitely be elderly. And the only, elderly, I think we would generally agree is probably, because, what's like 50s, 60s would be something like middle-aged-ish, right? We like, something like that. So then elderly would be like 70s, 80s, 90s. So let's say that they were on like the early scale of elderly at like 70s or whatever, right? Like they'd have to be like, let's say they were like literally 70 on the dot, right? Like by the time they show up here, it definitely has to be, yeah, by the time they show up here, they definitely have to be like well within, they'd have to be well over 100 potentially, which I guess it's possible, right? I guess that could be what Miyazaki and From Software wanted to stretch with them, is that these elders are just exceptionally old and have lived really long lives. But yeah, that one's a bit difficult to ascertain. It's definitely not been a full 50 years though. That would definitely be unreasonable. Yeah, honestly, I almost feel like shifting some of this stuff down. Like I almost feel like shifting some of this stuff down to like 40 years instead. Right? Because I feel like 80 to 50 years ago range. Yeah, sure, stuff with profane capital and things, obviously immediately following Wolnir and all that jazz. Abyss Watchers being established, yeah, that tracks. Again, the question is just, again, like, trying to position everyone's age relative to Sullivan. Like Shrine Handmaid's already pretty damn old, and she has to be relatively old when she's raising Osseros, right? So again, let's say like she was like in her 70s and like Osseros like sometime between then and her death, right? Which is again very reasonable. She could definitely have a son and probably already a granddaughter by that point that she's killed. Yeah, I don't know, chat. So I'm thinking like, I think I'm just gonna have to accept that we're gonna just have to like accept the ranges as being like very broad and just have the individual sections be their own thing, and just maybe leave an asterisk to be like, like some events may overlap or take place at the same time and not sequential to each other. Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is the limit of us not having years by the decades for stuff. With Bloodborne, this would definitely be a lot more reasonable, I think, to make, because so much of the games, like events and stuff, are more tightly constructed around, you know, 100 year-ish time frame for everything. So I think it would probably be a bit more reasonable with like understanding, okay, what hunters and stuff have been around from when. But this one I think is just, it's too broad. We have too many characters who are just broadly old. So they all could be like about the same age. And they're all growing up and doing various things, right? The only thing we can say for certain is that, you know, Crystal Sages do show up, but we don't know for how long, with all the stuff that's happening with Aldrich in the Deep, right? And when exactly the Crystal Sage deal has to be worked out in order to bring them there. And then the Crystal Sage has to be there it has to be what, like at least 10 years, right? Or around 10-ish years, let's say. Because Hazel has to manifest talent as a sorcerer, as a prodigy. And obviously you have to have hollows and stuff who are living their good time that they're having relations and stuff like that. So at least a good solid decade, right? Of the Crystal Sage being there before Farin falls, and then Farin has to become the crazy swamp, right? That it is with the grooves and everything. So honestly, you can maybe, honestly, I think, yeah, 30 I think is being very generous. I think maybe even closer to 20 might be where we need to put some of this, or 25 at least, I feel. I feel like this might be more reasonable. I feel like something like this would be more reasonable just overall for it, right? And then obviously Wolnir and stuff, about 80-ish years, right? The Squires are typically about like 12, 14-ish, right? Let's say 15 is just an average number, right? Then you add 80 years to that, they'd be like 95-ish when we're starting to see them. Obviously Croak in the Tomb of the Catacombs and stuff is like old men still holding on to their master's belongings from when they were still they're like basically their hand servants, right? Yeah, and then obviously around the same period that, of course, Wolnir and stuff falls, you have all the stuff with Yorm going on. We're never given an indication of how old Yorm is when he goes to link the fire, but let's assume he was relatively young when he becomes king. Say it's like, again, let's say he was in his 20s or something. He 100% has to be probably in his 40s or 50s, right? At least he should be around middle age by the time he's like meeting Yorm and everything. Oh, sorry, Siegward I meant to say. Thing is, he has a child. Leonard has to still be very young when he gets burned and stuff like that. So Karthus is like Jordan. No comment. No comment, I am. I will not comment on any possible real-life parallels be drawn between my fictional Middle Eastern country and real-life Middle Eastern countries. Obviously, Karthus with the conversions and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what I think I'm going to do? I think what'll happen is I'll have these individual sections given the asterisks for the idea that events likely overlap with other events in this timeline, and so should not be considered as directly sequential to what comes before or after it. Yeah. Right, okay. I know you're Jordanian, I am. You've mentioned it before. I just, again, like I said, no comment. Let's see, Koth encounters, Londor. Like I said, Londor is one of those that's definitely variable. You could overlap it with a bunch of this stuff here. Could be happening. Mm-hmm. Now, Dream Chaser, we could even argue takes place in the more recent 5 years if we want to push it. Like I said, bit vague here on the Londor stuff. You could definitely, again, we have, even with the 20-year gap I'm giving there, there's some wiggle room. Don't know how far back we would want to put it. Millwood, of course, all that. All right. So looking through all this, I definitely feel like, unfortunately, we can't get into too much of the nitty gritty because there's just so much stuff that is variable here, right? There's so many different sections that definitely, yeah. Let me go back up. There's definitely a lot of sections here, which you could kind of move around and be like, okay, it could be like, you can go, it could be like before this or after this. Like, it's definitely a bunch of stuff where it's like, it's hard to say. There isn't anything where it's absolutely contingent on it taking place when or where. So this is probably, I think, the most variable, the most flexible timeline we have in terms of order of events. Dark Souls 1 is pretty, like, you know, open and shut on, like, you know, cause and effect of being like, okay, this before that, before that, before that, before that. I don't think it's until you get to, like, the really recent stuff in the last 100 years with Undead Settlement that you can start quibbling over a lot of order and detail of things. There's some stuff during, like, the big Age of Fire, right, which you can argue over as well. But, like, I think generally with my analysis, there's a pretty solid order of happenings. Here there's a lot more wiggle room. I would say that this DS1 and 2 stuff, like I said, some of this stuff could probably go to DS1. Like, I could see stuff like the Herald Legion being at the very least, you could argue putting some stuff like that here. In fact, you know, I think I'm going to do that. Let's do that. Let's just put Herald Legion here because there's at least some argument to be had that they could be taking place before the events, as far as like them actually heading out to the Ring City as like the strongest warriors or whatever they were at the time. You can make an argument for this being before any of the major events, and I think that's fair enough because they're so out of the way. And like I said, this is inconsequential. But even this. Like, I could see a case for it happening sometime between the events with us, you know, performing the ritual at Firelink Shrine and heading to the Drake Keep to link the fire at the kiln, and of course our events of actions of the DLCs at the Drake Keep itself. Like, in between that period when the world is transitioning to the Drake Keep, I could see the Herald Legion having shown up and done things. So that's something I don't think we can discount either. So again, even something like this is pretty flexible. I think that's about it though. Most of the other stuff is like probably would go on a DS2 timeline as the post Dark Souls 1 events, and then of course some stuff that maybe overlaps with Dark Souls 2 events. With that in mind, I mean, barely 16 pages. Be closer to 15 pages if we took out the 1 and 2 things. And like I said, there's some stuff I could probably get away with, like combining and deleting and things as like superfluous. I don't know. I think this is. I'm not as happy with this timeline as I am with the 1 timeline. like I said, I would have liked if we could be able to determine like a little bit more on the strict order of events, considering just how much is going on with other characters or whatever. But unfortunately, the ages are vague enough that there's just so much flexibility on what's happening at exactly when. And there's just not enough happening for us to be able to really be like, no, okay, no, this has to happen at like age, like age like 20-ish versus age 30-ish or age 50-ish. So I think these age ranges are these year ranges are probably going to be the best estimates I'm going to be able to give us. And like I said, even then, some stuff you could maybe push on either side of this stuff, depending. Like I said, Fall of Millwood could be one of those, depending on what happens before or after Elfrida. But overall, like if all the major stuff is in its order and all that stuff, that's cool and all. Like I said, I might do asterisks for the sections, or I might just highlight the stuff. I talk about how like it's and let the highlight speak as like, oh, this is actually a lot more like flexible or whatever. There's a lot more room to argue, right? Either way, like there's not like a clear favorite on when exactly this happens in relation to everything else. But yeah. We're getting closer and closer to the DS2 timeline. We'll see about that one. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think DS2 timeline is going to be that difficult to cover. I think it's just going to be very dull because we have to go through down the list of countries, right? Let me highlight what we mean. Like look at this, chat. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like the Great Shift, all the stuff with the old ones, of course, would be part of that. Pharos, this is like an overall thing, but Pharos would be a relatively recent figure, so he'd be like, you know, toward the end of the timeline history stuff. Haida, Abyss stuff would be looped into there. Undead Crypt would probably be like looped in or kind of separate from there. You could even argue that you would have Undead Crypt talked about first for Great Shift, but like there's not too much to talk about either way. I mean, the only thing that really is like really vague here is like all the other factions that come in at some point in the timeline to the Undead Crypt and then of course end up getting killed and become part of the Undead Crypt's Guardians. So it's like, yeah, do the Insolent or the whatever, you know, do they come like before or after, like, I don't know, like Mytha? I have no idea. I don't think it's really that relevant. Then we have like countries like Mara and Jugo where it's kind of vague. Jugo would obviously be the after Haide stuff, but like Mira, like I guess we could kind of put Mara even before Haide potentially, because we don't have anything strictly telling us there's any reason that it would be established after the emergence of the Great Shift stuff. Like you could make an argument for Mara even already existing at the point. Sholva, of course, would be afterward as well. That's pretty clear cut. Lindelt, again, pretty clear cut. Heirs of the Sun, again, that's just like Covenant stuff, not even worth mentioning. Olafis, pretty clear cut. Volgan, I mean, Volgan, again, very vague on when exactly Volgan gets established, but of course we put it here due to some of the timeline stuff of what comes after. Alva, similar deal. There's a bit of flexibility on when we consider Alva being around. I mean, most of the Alva and Zully lore is going to be like its own separate thing, and then we have to add the additional stuff that 3 gives us, and that's like about it. Alkin and Ven, again, pretty clear cut. You have all the stuff with Harvest Valley there, Blow Sewers, and like all of this stuff is not difficult whatsoever. Ferosa, okay, so Ferosa, you can make an argument for putting it like even before Great Shift stuff potentially, right? Actually, no. Probably after Great Shift, because the idea is that if the source for knowledge about the old chaos and the reason they would travel so far to this area, to this knowledge they have know about, would be because of the Firstborn. So probably post Great Shift then, yeah. So it'd probably be post Great Shift, but you can put it anywhere around the time or before Haida. So that one's a bit vague, I will admit. Alien Voice comes afterward, Lion Clan comes afterward, and then we have basically Feroz is still around, or is only collapses in and of itself around sometime during the era of Drang Lake, right? Because you still have what's his face alive and able to serve as a mercenary in there. What's it called? Vangarl, right? And then, of course, obviously, the Giants. Giant Kingdom's establishment is not exactly clear, but just the Giants kind of just vibing or whatever. Like, I would probably maybe include that, even put it before Great Shift. Yeah, the only question would be when the Giants establish a quote-unquote kingdom with what they've got. That one's somewhat vague on where that idea would come from, what inspired them in that regard. But other than that, obviously the actual collapse and stuff like that, again, part of the Drang Lake timeline. Aldia, easy to fold in. Novlon, if even worth mentioning, easy to fold in. I actually probably should mention Novlon because of his execution stuff, and we could just mention it sometime in the history. So that one's kind of vague and variable, but nothing too crazy. Nashandra, pretty clear-cut. Dragotrine, clear-cut. Majula, clear-cut. Gutter, pretty clear-cut. Melfia, pretty clear-cut. Kaitha... beginning worship at Kaitha, but I'll be honest, I don't think even would be worth mentioning. Nar Alma, same deal. Yeah, Nar Alma, same deal. Probably only mention maybe the establishment of the Covenant with regards to the Huntsman Cope stuff. The Angel, same deal. Zeldora, again, part of the Drang Lake stuff, very easy to talk about with the timeline and things. Like, we just have to basically, during the Dragon War, mention all the stuff with Seath and the spiders or whatever happening at the same time. Velstat's easy. Raimi's easy. Literally, basically during the giant. We could literally have during the war with the giants or whatever. Raimi's doing his thing. They becomes under Nadalia's control. Scion easy because we know he dies and then his warriors are there and then his warriors are just kind of scattering. So that's easy. Looking Glass Knight easy. Berserkers easy because hired by Vendrick and stuff. Rat Kingdom again. We already mentioned Rat Kingdom in the Dark Souls 1 timeline. I'll be honest, I don't even think I need to mention... I really don't think I need to mention anything else there. And then... Gurm. Somewhat variable, but relatively straightforward. Landifear, I'll be honest, I don't even know if Landifear is worth mentioning. And then Ornifex. Ornifex would be tying to painting stuff, which would, again, probably tie into the post... probably before, no, it has to be after Great Shift, but post fire linking, post the fire linking of Dark Souls 1. So, and then Astrologist, same deal, not even worth mentioning. So I don't think, I think looking over it, bro, skipping on his wife. I did not skip, nothing important at least. Anyway, the point is that I feel going down this list, the timeline is very straightforward for most of the countries. There's only like a handful of places or characters where there's a lot of flexibility on when you want to put events related to them. Oh, sorry, chat. I don't know why I'm yawning. But with that in mind, I feel we've got that. I feel like this would actually not be that bad, but it's not really a priority for me to work on right now either. So yeah, this timeline here. This one was definitely the dullest in terms of having to rack my brain just to figure out where I would want to put certain events or what have you. But honestly, they could have these aren't the worst thing in the world, I guess. Okay, yeah. One there. Uniting, yeah. Oh man, I think we started out pretty strong though. I was very happy with some of the earlier stuff we were talking about. It's just it gets duller and duller when you have to get bogged down and all this different stuff with the various lords. At least the Ashen one stuff, it's that one stayed relatively straightforward. Even the Dreadkeep stuff wasn't that bad. Yeah, I feel like that's probably where I want to stop then. Because I feel like now it's just a matter of like iterating and like, you know, editing this to, you know, make the draft a little more concise and pretty and all that stuff. But I feel like I'm just gonna have to accept that stuff like Oseros and Sully and things, I'm gonna have to just like put something to be like, hey, this stuff can overlap with each other. It's not necessarily strict order, so don't think too hard about it. And I think that's where we're just gonna have to kind of drop it. Which is unfortunate because there's so much overlap. there's so much overlap, and it's like, damn. I think we give it a good college try, though. Yep. All right. All right, Chad. As much as I love kind of, railing against this timeline and everything, I feel like, we've got to wrap this up, and I can kind of end the stream here. Thanks to everybody who had shown up here. I appreciate you. Next time, I don't know what we're going to be doing. Probably going to take a break from this stuff. Maybe work on some trails or some HSR or what have you. Probably just kind of resting and all that stuff. Because now that I've got all this done, I really don't want to. I don't want to look at anything Dark Souls lore related for at least a few days. Now that I'm working on this, I don't think I want to work on anything too substantial on that for a bit. Or if I do, maybe we'll do more reactions or whatever on the side. We'll see. I think it should be fine. I think so too. I think the timeline is okay for what it is. Like I said, I would love if we could get more detailed, but that's just the limits. It's the limits of the lore of what we're told and what we can work out. So, I've tried to keep it within reason. So I hope I did a okay job, at least for this first draft. We'll see as I edit it. But until next time, guys, later.